Electronic arts is a
Oh,
big
yeah.
presence here. Lots of gaming companies are based here as well. So I think that also had, we get um, a little bit of the overspill of the talents from these two industries.
Yeah. Maybe we could switch topics a little bit for the last sort of section here. I know
Yeah.
you've studied and written and spoken on AI and specifically the ethics of AI.
Yeah.
Here in the US, a lot of companies, including Microsoft, have rather extraordinarily called for more regulation around the deployment of AI.
Yes.
I think particularly topical is facial recognition. I think this week the city of San Francisco has banned the use of
Hmm.
facial recognition by its police force. And yet, on the flip side, in China, it seems to be full speed ahead. And I've spoken to some bioscientists recently who were saying that they have to work in China because of access to these massive data sets that they need to model and prove kind of drug interventions are available. And I guess they just
Hmm.
different standards of privacy there, might make
Yeah.
competitive advantage. Um, and then the third sort of piece for me is I wonder whether governments can really effectively regulate AI because as we've seen here that they seem to be lagging behind. Sort of regulation seems to lag behind technology innovation, and
Yeah.
it doesn't seem likely that the current U.S. Congress and Senate is going to get their head around AI and the ethical implications of that. What's your point of view on this?
I was gonna say this could be a whole other podcast just based on all the questions. Yeah, I think a very interesting topic. Obviously, something I also been thinking quite a bit on and feel very passionate about. Yes, I agree. Like, it's very dramatic. On one hand, facial recognition being banned. I totally understand why. And on the other hand, like you say, full steam ahead. And in learning, actually, in China, they are using facial recognition to track students' engagement level in schools. I think in middle school. So just to see if you're smiling or are you yarning, how much attention are you paying? So it's quite scary, and I can't remember which school, but that already happened, and it's happening. So yeah, that does concern me a great deal because
Yeah.
it begs the question, just because people are looking a certain way on their faces, does it mean they are not learning? What assumptions are you making, right? I think that's the bigger question is, and it's whose assumptions are these?
I was at the Stanford Design School and we were having some fun with these kind of wearable MRI devices that sort of track brain activity.
Yeah.
In fact, what they track is oxygen flow, I think, or something like that. And we were having fun, I think, but we got into a whole debate around
Hmm.
whether it would be useful to have a kind of Fitbit-like device which would tell the learner, man, you are primed to learn, right? It's a good time for you to study. It's a good time for you to do that. And you think, well, that might be useful. And then you see stories like the use of facial recognition in China, and you think this is
Yes.
so ripe for misuse and abuse. And it does play into people's fears around the fact that machines can learn, which I think is a little bit of a language problem as well.
Yeah, I think I'm just wary about the assumptions behind that. Like, how do you know your assumptions were correct or it's not counterproductive? I think I don't have answers for all of that, but one thing I am always very mindful of, and I put this into my practice, whether it's my work, whether I organize events and I speak about this. Is That's why we need diversity in regulating and drafting policies, and in looking at AI and writing algorithms and putting these theories into practice. By diversity, I don't mean just
Ethnic
race
diversity.
or gender. I think Yeah, like, and then more than that, like age, I think startup is not very good at age diversity. It tends to be much more youth
Hmm.
oriented. I learned so much every time I talk to my two mentors. They're both in their late 70s. And the life experience they brought in, the views that they have, the historical data
Yeah,
they hold, it's
yeah.
tremendous. So I think age diversity, geographic diversity, even the lens of rural and urban settings, they have different kind of concerns and assumptions. Um, yeah, of course, cultural diversity, but also earlier I talked about the importance of being a polymath. So domain diversity, like the notion of domain switching, I think it's important to when you talk about AI, it's not just an issue of data and algorithm. It's not a technical know-how. It's about natural language processing. What about bringing a linguist? How you phrase certain questions? It's going to change the way you look at things. So bring in linguists, bring in policymakers, bring in sociologists, bring in psychologists, because they are going to look at it from their domain specific lens. And that's going to help mitigate some of the biases that we are not even aware of that ourselves. And I think that's what I still would think at a government level, there should be some regulation, there should be some policy guidelines, but I don't want a one sided, opaque government. It needs to be for the people, by the people. It needs to be open in terms of their process, in terms of the data, in terms of their methodologies, and also it needs to be the way they go about doing it. It needs to be inclusive and it needs to be consultative.
One would imagine, one would hope that would result in better product, in better AI.
I'm sure we're gonna get it wrong a few times, just like we have been. But I think the first step it's to be aware of it, right? To be mindful about our limitations. As I say, we don't know what we don't know. So you have to get to the point at least you know what you don't know to be able to say, you know what, we need to put this out there, um, so other people can fill in the gaps.
So AI and machine learning. I'm just about to go to a conference in Washington D.C., the ATD conference, and I guarantee you that every technology that I see there is going to have an AI or a machine learning angle to their pitch. I can tell already. Um,
I know we should bet on the percentage. I would say 80%. What do you think?
I would say. Let me see. Just if well, I'll do a survey and I'll get back to you on how many
That'd be
learning
great.
technology vendors claim to have an AI or a machine learning component.
Yeah, I'll say 70 to
Okay,
80, somewhere
all right.
around there.
I'll go higher than that just so that we've got a real bet. But I wonder what advice would you give to people who are shopping or talking to these vendors? What advice would you give people to sort of cut through the hype of this and make informed decisions?
I think the first thing is it actually solving a real problem, right? Like, is this going to help you? Like, is this something that it solve a real business problem or real learning problem? Like, because sometimes having AI actually is not useful. It's like shopping for a car. Like, do you need cruise control? Yeah, it's cool, but do you need it? Is it going to help you on what you need to do? So really understand what you're buying this for, and if this feature is actually solving a problem that you need to solve. Secondly, I also like to ask when they say they have this AI process or product, do they own the IP or is it built
Great
on something
point.
else?
Libraries from
So
Google
I
or
think,
Microsoft or something, just standard
yeah,
engines that are easily available. Yeah.
exactly. Because if they don't own it, then they don't have any control over the future direction, and think ahead. Um, And
Yeah.
I'm thirdly, I would ask about control and transparency. Like, do you as an administrator or as an end user, as a learner, how do you know what are the assumptions were being made? Like, how did they make decisions on, say, if this is a recommending system? How did you what is the decision making points? How and can you
Yeah.
adjust that? So I think I would unpack that a little bit if you can, have enough understanding and unpack that. That would be really helpful. And if they can explain it to you, most likely they can't give you control. It would be a black box. So
I think it's sometimes it's a keyword for magic. Just kind
magic
of like
happens here. Yeah, that's right.
magic happens. We can't explain how it happens because that's proprietary, but trust us, it's magic.
Yeah,
Great.
I hear about that so much. And sometimes I wonder if they just don't know because they are not part, like, a lot of these trade shows, you get the salespeople talking to you. So they genuinely don't know about the process. So you either ask to talk to the technical team if you can before you make decisions about buying products. I always want to get past the sales guy to dig a little bit deeper into the product itself. So I would encourage people to do that.
There's a lot of great primers out there on machine learning and AI as well.
Yeah.
A lot of MOOCs. You can sort of quickly get up to speed on the basic architectures and frameworks, which is good to know.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be really too much detail, just at the high level understanding, I think will be helpful.
You got it. Stella, we've talked a lot. We've gone way over time, which is good. But I like to just kind of close with a question around your personal motivation for working in this space. You talked about this Venn diagram between sort of creativity, technology, and learning. Is there somebody who inspired you, or was there an incident or something you read that pushed you to invest your career in this space?
I have to say my dad. He is truly a lifelong learner. He's always very curious. He's always very creative and enthusiastic. He's a great artist, but he also loved text. So I think he's an ongoing source of inspiration.
Oh, good for dads. Well, that's one for dads. I like it. Last thing, where can people find more or learn more about you and your work, Stella?
You can always go to my website, paradoxlearning.com. I also am fairly active on LinkedIn, so connect with me, just Stella Lee, search for me, or just Stella Lee, Paradox Learning. And connect to LinkedIn. Always happy to have a conversation and learn more about what other people are doing.
Great. Well, it was super nice to talk to you. It was great to meet you recently here in Seattle, and hopefully we'll find ourselves in Vancouver at some point in the not too distant future. But thanks for the work you do. It's very important.
It's a pleasure. Thanks, Chris.
I thought the future would be cooler.
Hey, thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Learning is the New Working. We're committed to this being a useful resource for you, so please email me at chris@learningfuturesgroup.com if you have any questions about anything we've discussed today. If you have the time, please take a few minutes to rate us on the podcast platform where you found us. It really helps other listeners find us and get value from the show.
I thought the future would be cooler.